Hello, this is Jean Marie Ward for Buzzy Magazine. With me today is James Morrow, the multi-award-winning author of the Godhead Trilogy and many other wonderful novels. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
You celebrated the centenary of World War I by releasing The Asylum of Dr. Caligari. What prompted you to use the silent film classic, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, as your lens to examine the war to end all wars?
It's not on screen explicitly in the movie, but the writers of the script intended it as a kind of allegory on the horror of the Great War, particularly the notion that the young men who were sent to the trenches to die by the hundreds and the thousands had been mesmerized, hypnotized by authority figures, military and political leaders. In the movie, the mountebank, the charlatan hypnotist, Caligari, has a traveling exhibit that he brings to village fairs, consisting of a somnambulist, a young man who's been asleep for the last 20 years, and he wakes him up during the course of his presentation. And the somnambulist represents the innocent victims of the hypnotist Caligari. So I wanted to make that very explicit. The Asylum of Dr. Caligari can be bracketed with some other novellas of mine that pick up on mass culture, Shambling Towards Hiroshima, which has a lot to do with Godzilla movies, and the Madonna and the Starship, which is sort of my tribute to 50s TV space opera. And so the premise is that Caligari, in my Dr. Caligari, who runs the asylum, is himself an expressionist painter. Of course, the movie is famous for its expressionist decor, very, very unusual set design, which sort of represents the interior of a madman's mind. He has created a painting that is so beguiling, it seduces young men into marching away, almost eager to die in the trenches. And so the plot involves my heroine, who is a patient of Dr. Caligari's, creating a counter painting, a kind of, you might want to map it onto Guernica, the great Picasso painting, yes, the great anti-war painting. So I thought it would be just fun to sort of mash up the behind-the-scenes facts of the movie, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, with the history of Europe during the terrible interval of 1914 to 1918, and with my own satiric sensibility.
Speaking of humor, and in a much lighter vein, I couldn't help but be struck by the title of your website, The Island of James Morrow. Is that a play on the island of Dr. Morrow? And why did you choose it to represent your home on the web?
Well, it's absolutely an allusion to the island of Dr. Morrow. A novella I very much admire. I think that when a science fiction writer is on his or her game, that author's actually contributing to a very large cultural discourse, and actually maybe even expanding our vocabulary, giving us new words. Orwell did it famously with 1984, so we got the words Newspeak and Big Brother. And I think the island of Dr. Morrow is a metaphor for the sort of brave new world we're headed into of manipulating our own genetic material. And of course, there's a blasphemous dimension to that novel. In fact, Wells called The Island of Dr. Morrow sort of my exercise in youthful blasphemy. And so I'm someone, of course, who glories and revels in creating blasphemy.
The Godhead Trilogy.
Yeah, the Godhead Trilogy, and Only Begotten Daughter, in which Jesus Christ's divine half-sister finds herself reincarnated in contemporary Atlantic City. The novel that next to the most recent novel of mine to see print, a book called The Philosopher's Apprentice, was a story I sometimes described as Frankenstein meets Lolita on the island of Dr. Moreau. And those three threads are running all through The Philosopher's Apprentice. Yeah.
Was there any reason why the shift to the explorations of historical fiction happened at the turn of the cusp of the 21st century, or was it just accidental timing?
Well, I guess when George Bush was in office then, there was an ascendancy of irrationalist voices, I think, around that time. And so you had Neil Stephenson's, was it a quintet or you know, his whole, you know, that marvelous epic of the Baroque cycle. J. Gregory Keyes did a version of the life of Newton that picks up on his alchemy as opposed to his physics. And then I weighed in with my last Witchfinder. I think we were all became preoccupied while the rest of the world was kind of turning against the Enlightenment, not only on the political right with the rise of you know, sort of scorched earth evangelical Christianity, but among academics who should have known better. The sort of critique of science that many postmodern thinkers had launched. And so I think J. Gregory Keyes and Neil Stephenson and myself just wanted to say, well, what is it about science that's so important? We think it's a pearl of great price. We think it's a precious gift not to be taken for granted. We don't think it's just a narrative. We think it's something that's unprecedented and that we're still reverberating from what happened in early modern Europe.
On your website and in various interviews, I've heard you blame everything on Uncle Scrooge comics. Teasing aside, I know you were a big fan when you were growing up. What were some of the writing lessons you learned from Uncle Scrooge?
Uncle Scrooge, well, you know, I just
happened to have
brought, this was back when comics were 10 cents. I think this is a comic.
Yeah, I'm going to have to lift it up because
circa, I think, 1957. So I'm reading this age 10. I mean, there are many tributaries that
I got it.
That sort of feed the river of my imagination and my fictional project. But yeah, one of those tributaries was certainly Voltaire, Candide, satire. You know, when I read Candide in 10th grade, I had this kind of inverse road to Damascus experience. And I said to myself, I wonder if I could ever do something like that, if I could be as blasphemous and as unaccepting of received wisdom as Voltaire. But before my 10th grade world literature class, there was Karl Barks. Now, when I was reading these amazing comics, I had no idea who the man was behind them. He's not credited here, and a great injustice. But the fans of the Uncle Scrooge series eventually found out. This was Karl Barks, who was not only a great artist, he was a great storyteller. And I think subliminally I learned three-act structure. As far as I know, the Uncle Scrooge comics were the only sort of funny animal cycle that went on for at least 20 pages, sometimes 24 pages. So you could tell, you could communicate a pretty epic set of ideas. They would always begin, they were sort of like portal stories. They would begin in the very prosaic bourgeois world of Duckburg, but before you know it, we're whisked off to some exotic part of the world. The plots were never monotonous, but they followed a formula. Uncle Scrooge, the world's richest duck, is always in a state of anxiety because something's going to happen to his wealth. And so some problem emerges and he has to protect his wealth by running off to Africa or South America or Antarctica. And I found that epic storytelling worked so well for me, because then it would all build toward a climax and be a denouement. And when I would dip into like the Marvel comics, I said, well, these have their own sort of energy and appeal, but they're not telling stories. So I think I salute Karl Barks. Taught me what a story is, and beyond his affinity for epic, the stories are satiric. I mean, Uncle Scrooge is miserable. I mean, the implicit message is that a life devoted to piling up money is not worth living. It's not that he holds up Scrooge to ridicule, but he's a pathetic figure, a very neurotic figure, and so that worked for me. I realized later that there's actually some political satire going on in the Uncle Scrooge comics that I didn't get at the time.
Hey, you can't get everything when you're 10, 12.
Yeah. There's a lot of Cold War stuff. I think legitimate critiques of Soviet dreams are often happening in the subtext of Karl Barks' stuff.
Wow. We are coming up against the end of our interview, and I'd like to know, what are you working on now?
Well, you'll never guess. A theological satire. working on an epic. Sort of satiric epic, so another salute to Uncle Scrooge. It's called Lazarus is Waiting, and it's about the colorful reign of Constantine the Great. And, when you take on Constantine as a subject, you get all of these spectacular pyrotechnical events. You get the vision of a cross in the sky.
Battle of the Milvian Bridge.
Before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, exactly. And you get the Edict of Milan, and you especially get the Council of Nicaea, where theological problems are being hashed out. The church is in crisis because of the Arian controversy, Presbyter Arius arguing that Jesus is in some way subordinate to God, not co-eternal with God, which for many people is a kind of commonsensical view of Jesus, but in fact the hard-nosed Trinitarianism of Athanasius is what won the day. But I thought it would be really fun, because this is science fiction, it's a kind of demented Doctor Who episode, there's time travel. I thought it'd be fun if Mary, the mother of Jesus, showed up at the Council of Nicaea and set these bishops straight about her son's nature.
I don't know that we can top that. Thank you, Jim. And thank you for Buzzy Magazine.